Boy, they changed that warrant stuff a lot. I just printed it out this afternoon. It's like, whoa, there's a lot of new things. Did I bring it? Some question about whether I brought it with me. But.
Warrant. So we're gonna do the tax application thing first, so these folks can have a chance to participate. Matt has asked for. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Westboro Advisory Finance Committee meeting, number 7 for fiscal year '23. Today is September 19th, 2022. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, meetings conducted by hybrid means will be conducted in person and via remote access in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body may access these meetings in person or via remote means using the link posted. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by accessing the meeting by in-person attendance only. Additionally, the meeting will be broadcast in real time via Westboro TV, Verizon Channel 28, or Charter Channel 192, and concurrently is being recorded for posting as soon as possible after the meeting on the Westboro TV YouTube site. That said, good evening, everyone. We've got a not a very crowded agenda this evening, but the first order of business that we're going to take up is the tax implications of the library renovation project. And we'll be talking about that with Leah Talbot. You all have, the committee all has copies of the memo that Leah wrote to us. I have also invited members of the Library Building Committee, and Maureen Amiot and Trustee Chair Mary Johnston are here. And as we discuss this, folks, if you would like to respond to questions, you're welcome to do so. Okay? All right, so Leah?
Because I'm short. Is that good? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, Leah Talbot, and your Finance Director. I was asked to create some information regarding the library and the tax implications. So I will start out by saying that there are very few numbers on this memo that are going to be completely accurate. Obviously, I don't know what's going to happen in 2026. So that being said, the memo, it was created on September 12th. The total project was updated the next day or a few days later, so my numbers were based on the original estimate that I received on the 12th, which is the $35.9 million. I will speak a little bit really quickly about the fact that the other night at the Selectmen's meeting, someone asked what would happen to the money that isn't spent. So we make a best effort to never borrow money that we're not going to spend. Sometimes when it comes to the end of a project, we might have a residual balance, but it's not like we're going to go out and buy and borrow $36 million tomorrow in hopes that the project will be $36 million. We borrow usually once a year, and so we will endeavor to work with the Vertex, and the other folks on the team to get a pretty good cash flow basis and an updated cash flow basis on an annual basis. So again, that we won't be borrowing money that we don't need. So I think someone said, will all the money go back into the general fund if they don't spend $1 million or $2 million? We wouldn't borrow $2 million and then have that residual left over. So again, these numbers are based on an estimate. So a full estimate of what would happen if the project expended all the money. It's based on no private donations because I can't know what I don't know. So the only thing we do know is the $9.4 million grant. So I've lowered the project costs by the grant, and then I did my calculations based on that. I did a 20-year borrow. That's what we traditionally do, is 20-year borrows. I used a 4% interest rate. I certainly can be argued back and forth about what the interest rate is going to be in fiscal 26 or 27 when we do the permanent borrow. That was, I felt like a good number to use, so that is the number that I used. And then I moved down to the average single-family tax increase of $308. That is, in my estimation, that would be the year that would be the highest amount, so the most amount that we would have to raise. If we had a principal payment of 1/20th of the cost of the $26.5 million, which would be the project less the grant, and then a 4% increase, 4% interest rate on that would be that $2,385,000, and that would equate to that $308 for the average single-family tax bill. Again, we don't know what the average single-family tax bill is going to be or the valuation is going to be in 26, but this is using current information that we have. It would be a $308. I did recalc that with the $36.7 million project, and it would be $317, about a $10 increase with the increase of the project costs. Also, I believe on the library board meeting, not the library board, but the building meeting the other day, Someone asked what the average cost of the project would, on the average single-family tax bill would be over the life of the loan. And I did recalc that, and it's about $245 a year over the course of the 20 years. So the high would obviously be that 317, we'll say, and the low would be around 180. Okay.
What was that
Then
average again? I'm sorry.
The average would be about $245, $242, depending on which number you're using for the project. But if you use the higher number, it's about $245 for the average single family over the 20-year span. And then I was asked about how much the total cost would be for the project. So if we borrowed, say, $27 million, because, again, I have two sets of numbers, right? I have the number of the 35.9, and then I have the 36.7. I would guesstimate that the interest costs on those funds, that's including the grant anticipation note and the short-term borrow and the long-term borrow, would be approximately $12 million over the course of, say, 25 years, because we're going to start the project and you know, probably around 2025, I think 2026. So probably about, I'm going to guesstimate $12 million. Again, all of those interest rates, I don't know what they are, so I'm just making my best assumption.
It's fine.
So the project would be, again, the 36.7 million less the 9.4 million, but it's my understanding that the grant is a 5-year grant. We're going to be given 1/5 of it over the course of the project. So if we end the project before we get all the grant money, we will have to short-term borrow the grant money until it pays back the project. There's someone trying to get in.
I know.
so.
Is that door open?
This the meeting for 7:30?
This is.
What meeting are you looking for?
No. There's a Board of Appeals meeting someplace.
Maybe across the street.
Probably across the street.
I'll help you find it.
Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you.
You know why they were coming here? They were using us here on Mondays.
Ah, yeah. Maybe it was last week.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
you're
Uh,
welcome.
Can I ask a question?
All right, yeah, please, question.
Okay, so the grant anticipation note you listed here,
Yes.
that's what, if the library board of commissioners pay us like 20% this year and 20%
Right.
next year, et cetera, but we have to buy materials in 2024, we may have to borrow that money too.
Right, exactly,
For a couple of
exactly,
years, a
yeah.
year or two, whatever.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, it's going to help us in the beginning, because
Yeah.
it's my understanding that we're going to get like the 1.8 right away.
Yeah.
So obviously, we wouldn't have to borrow if we weren't going to spend any, you know, if we're going to use that money to seed money for the project. But eventually, we're going to have to borrow.
We hope to be done before they,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
assume that they're going to be, you'll be done, but again, if we're done before we get the last final payment, and we're using the final payment to pay for the project, we will have to short-term borrow those funds.
Okay, and my second question is, in your notes, you say $1 million equals approximately 129 or whatever.
Yes,
But you also,
that's a kind of our standard.
okay, is that
Calculation.
the interest plus principal, or is that,
No, that's
That's
for
just-
the average single-family tax bill.
Yeah.
So basically, what we say is, if you spend $1 million, it's
If you-
going to cost the average single-family tax bill $129.
which would include principal and interest?
Well, it would include anything that you spend money on. It doesn't have anything to do with the capital project. It has to do with the fact that every $1 million you add
Oh,
to the
appropriated.
levy.
So if you had $1 million of interest or anything, it
Of
would cost about
anything, yes.
$129. Got it.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So, if I understand it right, we're never going to borrow $36 million.
That is correct, you're right.
We're only going to
right.
borrow $27 million theoretically. Or
Yes.
something close to that.
Yes, close to that. We would never permanently borrow, let's put it that way.
Right. So during construction, how does the project get funded for, does it get borrowed that year?
So we borrow, usually in March, we borrow historically, and with short-term notes. So we just roll them. So the first, say for instance, I'm just putting this out there, I'm not saying this is, what's gonna happen, but say for instance, this March, they say, we're gonna use that 1.8, we're not gonna need anything till the next March. And then the next March, they give me a funding schedule and they say, for that year, we're gonna need $8.5 million. Then I would go to market and borrow $8.5 million, roll it for a year. When we get out to the next March, we've spent the $8.5 million and they need another $10 million. I would borrow $18.5 million at that point for another year until we get to the end of the project.
And then at the end of the project, you refinance the whole amount?
Right. Right.
Any other questions?
Normally, it's
Yeah.
cheaper to short-term notes, so.
Oh, interesting.
Zaffer, do you have any questions?
Nope.
I have one.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So $245 is the average, which is about 2% of our average family tax bill right now. But in the first years where you're paying more interest,
The first,
it's more like $320 or
Right.
something, which is
right,
probably
exactly.
2.5% of our,
Right,
tax
because you're paying interest on the total principal.
Right.
And we use declining debt, and it's normally an
so the
even-
interest part of that is going to come down over the 20 years, just like a
Exactly.
home mortgage kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So we just don't know what the interest rate's gonna be come time to borrow.
If you
Right.
do, we can make a lot of
I
money.
I was
know,
gonna
I
say,
know,
yeah. I wouldn't say
It's
I
one of
wouldn't be
those-
working here,
it's one of
but
those
none of us would be working
unforeseeables.
here if we knew what the
Yeah,
interest rate was gonna
but-
be in 2026.
Okay, so I just wanna make sure we're clear. The 308 or 317, the 180 and the 245, those approximate tax payments include principal and interest.
That is correct.
Right, but in terms of real dollars, the project cost is 27 million after we take the 9 million from the state. And then there's the cost of capital on top of that, which is approximately,
I'm gonna say approximately
educated
12
guesstimate
million.
at
Yeah.
12 million.
Yeah.
So we're really looking at a, what, $39 million borrow? The project is really
right.
39 million, and if you want to,
After you're done paying your principal and interest payments, yes.
yeah, it's 39 million.
Yes.
Okay, and then hopefully the state will give us our full 9 million.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'd have to speak to the
Yeah, no, I'm-
library.
I-
Yes, yeah.
I don't think there's
Yeah.
any,
All right.
there's no question about getting the full 9.5
No,
million.
hey, you
Right.
know, we've said that about a lot of things, and then you
Okay,
never
Mike,
know what
That's
happens.
a bit far-fetched.
Yeah.
There's
Um,
no history of the LB Board of Commissioners
I'm
not
not-
paying their money.
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
What I am suggesting, though, is the real cost of this project to the town of Westboro is $39 million,
Right. Yes,
okay?
yeah.
All right.
If
Not
you're adding the
27.
principal and interest together, that's.
Yeah.
And the taxpayer will have to pay the interest as well as the principal, obviously.
And they're doing that in their monthly or annual tax payments.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Folks from the library have any comments you'd like to make
More questions?
or question?
Maureen Amiot, 6 Arch Street Library Director. I just wanted to make one comment about the final payments. So when we approve the project at town meeting and execute the contract with MPLC, they will release the first $1.8 million, as we've discussed. The future payments after that first payment are tied to project milestones, so we will never get to the end of the project and still be owed money as we meet certain milestones, whether it's 2 milestones in a year or we get to the end of the project and we've just hit whatever the last milestone is. That's the point that they'll release funds to us. So I just want to assure you that when the project is complete, we will have received all of our funds.
Okay. So that kind of wraps up, for now, the library project. If there are no other questions, we'll move into discussion of the articles that we've talked about. Thank you. Do you all have a presentation, or are we,
No, we do not have a presentation.
gonna wing it.
So,
We're gonna wing
we're
it.
working off version 3 of the warrant, so if you have questions about any of the articles, we can answer them or take them back. I think you had given us article numbers and then I changed them all, so.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
we start with one.
we start with one.
Yeah, so we can start with one. We didn't
Yeah.
talk about
Please,
one.
Let's go
just start with
numerically.
Okay. So as most of you are aware, when we have a prior year bill, we need town meeting to approve paying it. In this scenario, we actually have bills going back to fiscal 2018. So we have a bill in the Veterans Department, 2 in the town clerk's office, 1 in conservation, 2 in my office related to insurance. 2 in my office, and then 3 more related to insurance. So these are all bills. Some of the older ones, it's because we've been working with the vendor, and so they've come to light. So they're not ones that we've been aware of for several years. It's just in working with that vendor have come to light.
So we've switched to a all sum in instead of individually listed, which
I
is
thought it would be
okay, because
easier to
it's
see
not a
the
big
total
amount. but-
amount. Right.
So now we're going with just total amount, okay.
Would it be, is there somewhere a list of what those payments are?
I can go through them with you.
You don't have to if you don't want. If you could just share a list at some point. Or
Sorry?
you can or not. It's up to you.
Okay. I have them all in here. That's conservation. Yeah. So for Conservation Commission, the bill is $173.94. And this is for advertising. We have 2 from our office, Selectman Town Manager. So we have 1 for $116.87 and 1 for $40, and both are for printing. In the town clerk's office, we have 1 for $119, and that's voter ID cards. And then in the town clerk's office, we have 1 for $1,678.08. That's also for ballots. And then the veterans, 1 for $450 for busing for one of the parades. And then the ones for insurance equal $495, and that's for money owed for medical expenses.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, let's move on to Article 3, is it? The Finance Department budget adjustment?
Do you want to talk about it?
At the very end of the fiscal year, I went to Christie, and Christie went to the Board of Selectmen to ask for an upgrade for the chief assessor's position from an S7 to an S8, and they approved that change, and so this would fund the position in fiscal '23.
So the way that we do that process is we have a classification plan that sets you at that S number. We also, a couple years ago, you'll remember that we did a class and comp study for all non-union positions, and that created a rubric and criteria that we use now to value job descriptions. So we updated the job description, which causes us to look at that rubric, which changed the class and comp.
Questions, folks? Okay, moving on. Article 7,
This is on here as a placeholder for union contract negotiation, so I don't have any details on that at this point.
all right. Article
Oh.
8 is, I'm sorry, Walter, do you have a question on the police one?
No, I just wanted to go back because just a, 4 got split in 2, so we're gonna use free cash now for part of the DPW.
Yep. So we had that discussion at the select board meeting, the possibility of doing the raise and appropriate for the operating expenses, which is the fuel, as well as the water operation contract. And then Chris had presented, I think to you as well, the need for the unscheduled maintenance, which was the issue that we had with the town hall elevator, the DPW garage HVAC. And so we pulled that out and put it as a free cash item.
But in sum and total, 4 and 5 are the old 4, so to speak, but they're
Yes.
split by where their funding sources
Yes.
comes from?
Yep.
Okay. And that means they have to be separate articles, or it's just cleaner?
The way that I feel that it's cleaner, it could be a little bit convoluted because the
Yeah, yeah,
intention
yeah.
is not to necessarily increase the DPW budget by the free cash amount.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Sorry for-
Article 7, we had the police department.
Oh,
Andrew,
8
you
is
got a
new.
question?
Just a quick question, the timing on this, I thought these salary things tended to hit around the main town meeting instead of the fall town meeting. Is this just coincidental with the timing of the contract?
Which salary?
The
You mean the
police?
police?
The placeholder for 7 for the police?
Yeah, so our contracts, most of our contracts expired on June 30th. And so we've had this often where we bring a contract that has settled later
Okay,
to fall town meeting.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Oh, so this is actually for this fiscal '23. If it were settled now, they'd already
Any
get that
costs
now.
for fiscal '23 would be part of that
Got it.
number.
Okay.
Yep.
Article 8 is the Assabet Valley, but I think we'll just call the Assabet Valley folks in.
Do you want us to try
Or
to
do you
speak to
have
it?
some
Yeah.
explanation for it? Okay.
Yeah.
Seems pretty small.
So
Yeah.
they forwarded a letter to us, and so last year, they had taken their ESSER 2 money, and they had put it towards all of the assessments, so our assessment was lowered by $45,000. Right now, they're working with DESI, and they're doing the end-of-the-year report, which is due, I believe, at the end of October. And DESI is looking at their numbers and seeing what they did with that $45,000, and DESI is telling them that that $45,000, I guess, carried forward to fiscal '23's budget. And so they're telling them that they incorrectly, I guess, did their minimum local contribution. And so DESI's telling them, you have to go back to your assessment, your communities, and increase your assessment. Because basically, I guess they kind of made a mistake when they were doing things. They incorrectly thought that they could do something, and unfortunately, they were relying on the state was going to pass something in the supplemental budget that didn't happen. And so they've had to come back now to all their member communities and ask for a budget increase. So we do have a letter from them explaining that whole thing in detail.
We
Well,
can
if we
send
can
you a copy.
avoid,
Right.
if we can avoid asking them to come in, it would be,
Yeah,
you know.
We can scan a copy to you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, if
can-
you
Yeah.
could, just for the record.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not
Okay.
really like they're asking for more funds because of a project or something.
Yeah.
It's just DESI's telling them that they.
So I wonder if they can use those ESSER funds in another way, or are they too late now? Or?
No, they used them.
Oh, but they
It's
used them.
just that I think that what the base they used perhaps was lower because they lowered our assessments by those
Ah.
ESSER funds. And so now they've got to increase the new fiscal year
Got
because
it.
they shouldn't have used that as a base. That's where,
Yeah.
So is the 8,781 amount, does that sort of make up for last year and catch this year up?
no, it's just for fiscal '23.
Okay,
But it's because of their use of ESSER money in fiscal '22. Their base for '23 was '22.
Okay.
So I think
We
their
only
base for
pay in
20
'23
Yeah, yeah.
what we
No.
used in '22.
should have been higher
Right.
to
okay,
vault off for '23.
yeah.
Okay, Andrew?
And that 8,700 is a reflection of X number of students times whatever the adjustment amount is?
The total is,
The total is,
so the
right.
total operating budget piece that we pay as part of our assessment is related to how many students we send.
Okay.
Yeah. So the total assessment for Westboro for the operating budget is $791,784, inclusive of this 887, and then for capital is $125,521.
Any other questions on that? Okay, moving on to Article 9, cable TV.
So the Cable TV Advisory Committee is completing negotiations with Verizon, and they're going to be bringing a contract to the board on Tuesday night for signature. And so, based on some of their negotiations, there'll be this additional $50,000 that they're anticipating, and as we always do, we have to raise what we're getting, and then we can spend it. So this has no tax impact. We just have to identify the amount of money that we're getting, and we do that through this raise and appropriate in our regular recurring articles. I can explain that probably.
Questions?
I thought didn't we lowered the number at last town meeting or something, so we're
So-
just putting it back where it is, kind of?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what happened is.
Was it 300, I think?
It was
Yeah.
300, and then it was 200, because when we do the recap sheet to set the tax rate, there's a separate sheet that I have to do for the Department of Revenue that is for each individual enterprise fund. And the Department of Revenue looks at what you received in revenues, and they don't really like to see you spending what you didn't collect the year before. And so last year, we had only collected 249, and when I went to DOR, we had the 300, and he was like, you only collected 247, I think it was. Why do you have 300? And I said, well, I didn't know I was only going to collect 247 when we did the budget. And so he's like, well, next year, can you lower it back down so that it's somewhat level? And I said, sure. And I reached out to Karen, and Karen was like, yeah, absolutely, 250 works for me. So we lowered it to 250 to make the Department of Revenue happy. And then she called me the other day, and she said, hey, I think we need to bring it back up to the 300. So.
No, but we will know for sure about the contract before we vote this, so we don't get you in a sticky situation again if that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we actually just got an email tonight that they're going to be bringing that to the board on Tuesday.
Okay.
So,
In plenty of time to pull
Yeah.
this off the warrant
Pull
or
it
pass
if
over it.
It's not true, yeah.
Right.
Or say no.
Okay. Article 10, the server room cooling equipment.
So in version 4, this number is actually going to go up to a little over $10,000. But the server room cooling equipment is something that our IT director has requested. You'll probably remember that last year we had an article for cooling equipment that was for the DPW and the fire station. Originally, in the initial ask or creation of the initial ask for the capital planning committee, they had included the town hall split unit, and it actually got pulled out because some further analysis thought that we could sort of keep it going, maintain it for a little bit longer, and now it's really gone. So in August, our server room hit temperatures in the 80s, which you all know is not good for any of our equipment. And so they've done an assessment, and it can't be repaired. So the request is to replace the town hall server room cooling unit.
You said it's going to go up over 10?
It's a little bit over 10.
Okay.
Is there anything in the regular budget to take care of those types of items? I know there's a capital, I know the DPW has a budget for building stuff.
Sure.
Is there anything in there that could be used towards that?
So our IT department did reach out to DPW to see if there was any additional money. And there really is nothing allocated that would take care of this $10,000 cost. So we talked about, should this actually go into that building maintenance article?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
But we wanted to sort of separately acknowledge the town's technology needs. So,
So
what-
is the town technology separate from the budget, something like this is separate from the
Yes.
DPW maintenance?
Yep.
Okay.
Andrew?
When we talked cooling rooms last year for capital and the other ones, the question I asked had to do with how much we're moving online and how much is going to be cloud-based so we can move away from these server rooms.
sure.
And I know that at the time the conversations was that some of that is happening at the very high level. I'm asking again, are we still do we still have plans to try and move a lot of this stuff online or on clouds?
So we actually just are completing our IT assessment. We got a grant and we hired a company to come in and do a third-party assessment of our technology needs. And part of that assessment is looking at exactly what you're talking about. So there's pulling together that final report, and we'll be reporting out to the select board. Obviously, not in
Great.
advance of this meeting, but we hope to, have that rolled out, at least recommendations this fall, so we can start addressing some of our issues.
Okay, so this is 10,000. I think the ones last for capital, or the capital meeting was about 30,000, but I don't think it was up quite, actually was up that high. So we're spending a lot of money. Is it possible that the assessment's gonna come back and suggest we could be, not losing the space, but, saving on what would have been a lot of other computers? Is there a risk we're overspending here to heat things, to cool things that there's gonna be a lot less of?
I think based on the preliminary report, we're not going to completely remove the need for server rooms. So we would need to be able to cool it.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm just curious how old the existing split is that's failing.
I don't have that information. I can follow up with Mark, our IT director, and
Okay.
send you that information.
I was thinking the same thing, Gene, but
I was just
I
wondering,
figured that was
if it
just me.
part of the most recent renovation.
that's what I was wondering, yeah.
I was thinking it would be
Y-
well within its useful life.
Sure. So we moved back.
Or I would
so-
hope it would be well
right.
within its useful life.
So we did
As the
move,
owner of some splits.
right, so we moved back into town hall in 2015, I think. But I don't know that all of that was brand new when we moved it, because I think we tried to sort of move stuff around. So I would have to
Yeah.
check with him on that.
Anything else? Moving on to Article 15, acquisition of 0 Ruggle Street.
So this is a purchase of 0 Ruggles, or off Ruggles Street for $325,000. This is about just under 16 acres. It directly abuts the Daypray property, which we purchased, I think, 2 years ago. So we're hoping to connect some trail systems. Also significant to that property is that at the top, it's a high elevation at one end of the property, and at the top of that property is a current water tower. And the property line cuts very close to that water tower, so the intent would be to carve out a portion of the property that would be under the care and control of the select board, so that if the DPW were ever in need of doing anything to that water tower or increasing the size, that we would have that ability. The portion in the middle would be carved out for open space or under the care and control of the Conservation Commission. And then we proposed a small lot at the lower part off of Breen, where people might be able to do some parking, some trailhead parking. Understanding that when we purchased the Daypray property, there was 4 acres reserved for a large parking lot. So this would really just be, as we've talked about it, similar to Belknap, where people could just sort of drive in onto a grassy area and then access some trailheads. So I don't have that A&R to show you, because we're still working on getting that completed. But that's really the intent of the purchase of that property. We have also applied for the land grant through the state. You might remember that we applied for that for Belknap. The Belknap property, which we did not receive, that would give us about 58% of the appraised value, so about $80,000 for 0 Ruggles. We think that we have a good chance, because there's a lot of things that we didn't get points with for Belknap that we expect to get points for 0 Ruggles. So that would obviously reduce the price. And then we're working to put together, to ask Walkup Robinson to put together a meeting to see if they could share the cost of the property similar to how they did with the others. Any additional costs that Walkup doesn't pay for, we would propose being taken out of sale of real estate, so there would be no tax impact.
Any other questions?
So when you say sale of real estate, what type of real estate?
So when we sell real estate,
Yeah.
that money goes into an account called sale of real estate.
Oh, there's an account already there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that money can be used on anything for which we could
Okay.
borrow, so.
Thumbs up.
Every year we learn something.
That's what's great about being the new person on the board. I get to ask all the questions, so the people on TV.
They're good questions, yeah.
So the water tower you're talking about is like all the way to Fay Mountains? Like, this property is that big?
Oh, yeah, yep,
So it's the big water tower where we are putting in the, I don't know, chlorinated or something
Chlorinator,
like
yeah.
that? The
Yeah.
same place?
same, yep.
Wow.
Yep.
So that's
I
a
could sh-
big piece of land in the middle of there. I didn't realize.
Yeah,
You're just coming at it from the other direction.
right,
You're
it
not
is
coming
from
at it from
Ruggle.
Adams.
yeah.
It
I've-
runs behind all those houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I had my computer, I would put it up on the
Yeah.
screen.
Well, you
so.
could,
Well, it's
you know, have
15,
somebody, borrow the
it's
police,
15 acres.
The drone?
Drone.
Well, I was just gonna put up the map, but yeah, that would be much cooler.
Yeah,
So, and does this connect, this actually connects to the property that we purchased at the top?
The Daypray property, yep. One of the property lines is the same as that property, yep, or shared. That's one of the things that we think will be positive on our land grant application, is that it's connecting an existing piece of open space.
Yeah. Wow.
anything else?
Yeah, why is it so inexpensive? Landlocked. It's just non-buildable or something?
Right.
On the market for like 5 or 10 years.
There was another big piece of land that abutted it abutted Adams and it abutted Mass Pike, and they were talking about putting a new school in there. And then it's just too wet.
So just,
That doesn't come up for a while.
just out of curiosity, how much is in that fund, the real estate
Sale
fund?
of real estate,
1.8,
yeah, maybe 1.8.
1.8 and change.
So when we sold the State Hospital property, that money went in there. Trying to think of other things.
Right,
Oh, the Spur
When-
House.
When the Spur House, yeah, and when and if we sell the
The Regal.
Regal, the
Theater,
money will
yeah.
go in there as well. And then it has to be appropriated by town meeting.
moving on to Article 16, rescinding the borrowing authorization.
So these were recently on our annual town meeting warrant, and we had several items that we put in the article information that they were being considered for ARPA funds, and these were 2 of them. We went through our process, and which you folks were a part of it, and awarded ARPA funds for these 2 projects. So we're rescinding the borrowing authorization, understanding they'd be funded by ARPA funds.
Any questions on that, folks?
Does that, aside from we can't borrow it anymore, does that help our credit sort of thing, that we don't have open borrows, or it's just cleaning up
It's mostly cleaning up.
and people feel happier because you don't decide to use the money?
Well-
We'd have to vote to use it for anything else anyway, right?
Right.
Right, so technically, our consultant, Clifton Larson Allen, told us that when you use ARPA money for something that you had previously approved as a borrow, you actually need to go back to town meeting and rescind that borrow. So this is kind of part of that process as well. So, and obviously, you're not gonna buy the high school chillers again, so you would never be able to use these, well, maybe 20 years from now, but you know what I mean? And so the
Probably
purpose for which town meeting authorized these borrows is not going to take place except through the ARPA funds, so you'd want to get them off
You
your books.
can't use the funds for anything else.
No, and the
period.
funds aren't funds, they're just the authorization to
Right.
borrow funds. No
We
money
haven't
has
ever
been
borrowed
borrowed,
it yet.
so therefore you're just cleaning it up, kind of.
Got it.
Okay, Article 23, acceptance of Mass General Law, Chapter 138.
Yep, so by accepting this statute, we would be able to allow businesses or that had liquor licenses to sell alcohol beginning at noon on Sunday as opposed to, at 10 a.m. on Sunday as opposed to noon. The way that it works is if you are a package store, you're selling off-premise alcohol, that just happened. So the state law changed and you could start selling earlier as opposed to on-premise. Now, it requires a vote of town meeting.
Questions?
Is this called the brunch bill or something?
We've been approached
Mimosas.
by some, right, yeah, exactly.
The mimosa. And so I assume there's interest by some of the restaurants to do this.
We've had some inquire, so we looked into it and realized that we hadn't accepted it yet, so.
Is it something we have to accept?
You have to accept to allow businesses to do it. So if we vote no, if the town votes no, then it would remain at noon on Sundays.
No mimosas till noon.
There you go.
Oh, breaking your heart, huh? Okay, and if there are no other questions, Article 26, grant of a utility easement, 123 Fisher Street.
Yeah, so this one I have a graphic for.
Did Fred come with it for this one already?
I think they're, I don't-
Thank you.
We heard from them, and I had a question, but I think you
Yeah.
clarified it in your new part, because I was confused by the first paragraph, but that's all gone.
Yeah, Fred came in and he said, why does it say all this stuff? And I said, oh geez, that was not
I
on
don't understand
purpose.
what this has to do with, it was an old warrant.
Cut and
Okay,
paste.
so I don't have a question anymore, and I
Okay.
think they did a
Yeah,
fine.
and Zach emailed me today and said there's a new warrant coming out.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, we already know about it, thanks for following up, so we're good.
So this is an easement, National Grid is asking for it. They want to add 5 poles. So it's because it's outside, it's on town land, but not on the right of way. It requires a town meeting vote. So, this is something they actually requested several months ago. So they've been working on the easement with our attorney. So they want to add these 5 poles to the town property on Fisher Street.
So what is the square or the building here?
I believe it's a pump station.
And why do they want to go around the pump station?
That's a good question. The easement is specific about sort of creation of these poles, but I don't know why they've chosen the path that they've outlined. We can get some more information from them.
Town property on Fisher Street is the schools, or is there something else? It's just other property that's town property?
This
Yeah.
particular property
Yeah.
is town property.
I'm just trying to figure out where on the Fisher.
So it's
Just
across.
beyond the train station.
No, it's fine.
Out past the train.
It's where Fisher goes into Smith Valve. It's right there.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
it is a pump station there.
What's that, Gene?
It is a pumping station.
Figure it out,
Any other questions for
yeah. It's like
our town manager and finance director?
Other than the pump station, there's nothing else on this that we use anyway.
Right.
Just want to confirm the 29th.
Yes.
That's fixed,
Yes.
and it's going to be across the street, and
Yep.
it's going to start at 6 o'clock. And
Yep.
it focuses on fiscal '24.
Right. So we'll do what we typically do, which is we'll give sort of a wrap up to where we landed at the end of fiscal '22. We will, and then we'll talk about budget pressures facing us in fiscal '24.
Okay.
Does that still work for your committee?
Sorry?
Does that time still work for the committee?
As far as I know, nobody
The
has.
time does, it's not for future. It's not ideal because it's in between when the warrant closes and we have to have our booklet done, isn't a good time to do these meetings.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I suppose we could do it on not Monday or Thursday, but it would always need to be in September because of the timing of the budget. So the point of it is to talk about budget pressure so that as everyone's preparing their budgets, they're aware of everything that's going on. And we have an October deadline for budgets, so.
So.
But we can certainly work on
Well,
that.
Yeah, but, well, okay, so, but it would have been better, say, last week than, but in the future. I'm
Yeah.
saying.
We always do
We-
it that week,
we-
but if you have another
we get a-
suggestion.
We have a really tight window because the select board doesn't decide on the warrant until
27th.
about a week before we have to have our book done. So
Mhm.
that's, well, it's 2 weeks, but this there's a holiday and this, so. It's fine. We don't have a huge warrant here. So we're okay.
Just wait till version 4.
Well, if you're gonna add more.
There's 84 articles
then
on
we'll have to
version 4.
talk.
Yeah. just-
Looking forward to version.
Thank you.
Please do.
Thank you. Thanks for
All right.
coming.
Thank you, ladies.
night.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Any liaison reports?
So next Thursday at 8 a.m., several of us will be touring the Westboro wastewater treatment plant.
How many takers do you have?
I think we have Gene, you, myself. Were you, Walter? No, I think that's,
I wanted to, but I don't
yeah,
have to.
I think the three of us.
8 a.m.
Yeah.
Okay. Bring a mask.
It's actually very pleasant out there. Nice landscaped green areas. You'll be very impressed.
I'm sure. Okay, if there are no liaison reports, then the question becomes whether or not we want to have a meeting on Thursday. There doesn't seem to be anything pressing on the agenda unless somebody's,
Am I correct that we're gonna still hear from the plant board guys in like October 3rd?
the
Yep.
water treatment plant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there was, that's the one-
Wastewater treatment.
that's the only article of significance we haven't talked
Yeah.
about, but I think they're coming the first week of
Yeah.
October and not this Thursday anyway.
So unless
That's good.
somebody wants to meet on Thursday,
I guess they were joking about a ton of new things in version 4. That's really, we're not expecting a lot of new
well,
things.
so far we are, we don't know if there are going to be any citizen petitions that pop up.
We've never had more than like
I'd
one or
be
two of those,
surprised
so.
If version 4 was done before Thursday,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
because
Okay.
it's only like
Even
4
better.
days away.
It's usually, actually, it's true, because it's been coming out like at the end of a week. The Friday, what is it, the Friday dump, right?
Dump it at noon and you go
Yeah.
home.
You go home,
Dump it around.
exactly.
Is there any idea, Article 7 for the police budget, roughly,
Well, I'm sorry, Tom, what was that?
Article 7, the police department budget, do you know roughly what that dollar amount's gonna be?
They're super reluctant to release anything
Yeah.
because it becomes a public stake in the ground for negotiations, which
Yeah, they're
is,
still negotiating.
Yeah, that could be a bazillion or it could be
yeah.
10,000.
Yeah. Okay, so the next meeting then, since if we don't meet on Thursday and Monday's a holiday, the next meeting will actually be the joint committee meeting on the 29th. And then we have October 3rd, we start voting. And we need to really get that all wrapped up by the end of the week, so we may have to come back on Thursday and vote some more. And then I've got to get a draft of the R&R, the report and recommendations, put together, circulate it over that weekend, and get it to the printer by the 10th, so that we could have it for town meeting. There may be some give in that, since the town meeting's not on Saturday, it's on a Monday evening, so maybe I don't have to get it to the printer until the 11th or 12th. They're pretty good in turning things around, but part of that R&R for Gene and Rod is we do a kind of a statement from the committee, so when I draft that up, we circulate it. So if you all have any thoughts about what you think we should be advising the voters of in that statement, because that also serves as the basis for my remarks from the committee at the town meeting. Please let me know. I mean, it could either be just a short note or a line, or call me, and, you know, we can talk about it, yes.
One general thing we might consider, you pointed out 12.5 million in interest for the library, kind of a true cost, principal and interest. Is that gonna be mentioned in the article, you think? Or
In what
Walter might
article?
know better. For the library, like
Oh, we
knowing that taxpayers like,
That's
hey,
not normally how any of the articles are done, but people can comment on it.
yeah, that's right, I don't like, 'cause I feel like that'd be
The
a good number
schools,
for
when
the
they
taxpayer.
borrow $45 million, they don't say, well, with interest, it will be.
Bingo, that's where I'm going. It might be a conversation worth having offline or a different
You
day.
can't have it offline, it's
Well,
gotta
not offline, but a different day.
be, it's gotta be a different day.
A different day.
Yeah, we may be able to have that conversation on Monday after we start voting.
Although
It depends
you
on how
would
much-
propose that you put that in every article
Every
going
article,
forward.
not just the library.
Not,
Every
you're not
article.
singling out one
Oh,
article.
absolutely not, yeah.
Because we don't have estimates for other things like the wastewater treatment plant.
Correct.
Yeah, but in reality, maybe we should start looking at that as a process matter. That, so we understand, because the dollars are coming out of the town, and, you know, and the taxpayer, okay?
Yeah, that may be. I'm just suggesting that we don't treat one article different
Correct.
than
That's
another
exactly where I was
article.
going, Gene, is
We've
do
got
it-
multiple articles
Right.
with,
Do it across the board for all of them, say,
Yeah.
hey, if we gotta pay interest on it, it also costs this amount. And I also like, we use, just rule of thumb, that $1 million is $129 an average single family, might be good to share that,
That's
That, I
always-
think currently
that's always
appears,
in
That's
there.
always,
Good.
yeah.
like highlight that.
yeah,
That, and there's a couple of those little,
yeah.
Yeah,
We
those
do
first
have-
3 pages are real page turners, so
They
you
are.
talk about
Yeah.
highlighting it.
It's hard to
Oh,
put
There you go.
Show me
down,
memorizing it, exactly.
really hard to put down.
All right, we should get one of those checked out.
We're gonna put it up for the Nobel Prize for Literature next time.
That's my vote.
Yeah.
Can I just correct
Yes.
something that we said? I'm not sure that it matters, but the Ruggle Street property that we're purchasing, the top, it's not Fay Mountain at the top. It's the Ruggle, I think they refer to it as the Ruggle Street Water Tower.
Ruggle Street.
So,
Okay. that
I don't
makes
know if
more
that's
sense.
one of
I
the
didn't
ones,
think it-
but,
I'd
yeah.
gotten
So I just wanted to
far.
clarify that. We thought we were talking about it downstairs, so.
Does anybody know how long that property's been on the market?
Which one?
0 Ruggles?
I'd have to go back and look. Do you, do you know?
No, I'm not
Oh,
sure.
I didn't know if you were
Raising
looking
an
at it on
honest
your
question.
computer. So, thank you, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Z has a question.
I mean, that interesting.
Oh,
it-
Z, Zafra, you have a question? Don't go away, Chris.
Yeah, Mike, you brought that very important point on the total cost of the library and including the interest. Could that number be reflected in the article somehow?
Exactly what we were saying.
No, because what you have to vote in the article is the ability to borrow that much money. You do not know how much interest rates will be. You do not know how much you will actually borrow. You just have to authorize borrowing that much. Much like when you go and buy a house for $300,000, you don't say, I'm buying a house for $600,000.
Yeah, but it's
Because I'm
good to
gonna
know
have to
what
pay
your
interest.
monthly expense will be.
It's an estimate, but it can't be part of the article because it's not accurate.
Correct.
Well, things like our bond rating are impacted as well,
Yeah.
if we were to go crazy, but we have a finance team that's been very
This
careful.
isn't the same as borrowing $39 million. It's,
Roger,
you're still borrowing 27. So you
the
have
cost
to
of
be
capital.
careful about how you phrase it,
Mhm.
Mhm.
just like when you buy a house.
Walter, I had one question for the building committee. I didn't think of it while they were here, but I wonder what does the average taxpayer spend, what is the cost to the average taxpayer now for the library? And then will there be additional costs beyond the cost of the borrow for maintenance, staffing, any of those other types of things?
So the library budget,
It's in
Yeah.
there.
calculate from our budget.
Yeah, okay.
And you'll know, Christie, are you gonna have any sense of what their ask might be for '24 for the library? In their budget? No? Okay,
So the new library wouldn't be open till this,
25.
yeah, almost this.
No, but to
26.
respond to the, well, you could look at.
Yeah.
We could look at the
Yeah.
23 budget.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're carrying any additional loans against it for any of the additional building or anything, so that would involve, that's already off the books.
Yeah.
So at this point, the cost of the library is literally their budget.
Thank you, Christie, for staying.
Move quickly, we have questions.
Or s-
What's that?
Tomorrow's not stuff.
Next.
It's a week.
one piece you might want to include in the cost of the current library is the deferred maintenance.
Right, right.
As a negative, you mean?
No, I mean, just, you know, if you're comparing the cost of the new library to the cost of the current library, you know, yes, the
and
current
that-
the cost of the building is off the books, but the deferred maintenance isn't.
Yeah,
You would want to include that.
the
as a
table
cost.
stakes being $19 million just to keep that building open. Early estimate, I still think that's a little overstated, but 15 to $20 million just to keep that building working
Right.
with nothing, with no
With no
net
upgrade.
benefits. Well,
Well,
the fact that I have an
there's still
ADA
the
and
upgrade.
fire
Well, okay.
sprinklers,
ADA compliant.
I would, I want to stay away from the no upgrades,
Yeah.
but it's really, it's a cost of
Same
doing
space.
business.
Same space, yeah.
Yeah.
These are the kinds of conversations we should be having about all the major projects in this town, you know? Because, and we don't. In the past, we never had, that I'm aware of, these kinds of conversations, where we talked about the cost to borrow, where we talked about deferred maintenance. And, you know, those are the hidden costs. As the taxpayer, we all do as taxpayers, what is it gonna cost me, right? And if the tax number looks like something I can handle, all right, I'm good. But, you know, you don't have the frame around it. So, I mean, and I agree with you. If we're gonna do it for one article, we should be doing, or one project, we should be doing it for anything we're borrowing on.
Yeah.
We should understand what the whole picture is,
I was
right?
not looking to single out the library.
Pardon?
I was not looking to
Yeah,
single out the library.
No, I know you weren't, Tom. I know you weren't. But, you know, I've sat in and, you know, anybody's been on a committee for a while has sat in on discussions of articles on construction projects, and that has never come up. It's
So-
never been a discussion.
You may want to pick up the conversation with Joyce at some point, because I know this is a windmill she's tilted at in the past. Joyce Hemsley.
Jody Hensley.
Jody, I'm Joyce, what am I saying? Jody Hensley, sorry about that.
Yeah.
And I'm,
Might be
I'm pretty
worthwhile.
sure Hank has because this is not a novel conversation, but there's always been reasons that it has never come to fruition, more than it has. So it's a great idea. I'm all for the transparency. That something has blocked this conversation in the past, or blocked implementing this in the past. And Jody may be more knowledgeable than I about.
Maybe some of it's in the last 5, 8 years or something, the interest rates have been so low, it isn't as significant, but if you go back,
Yep.
you know, 25 years or 30
Yep.
years when they were like really high, it was probably a
And
huge
it's the-
effect.
Yeah, and the
Maybe
direction
maybe
you're
when
heading in.
interest rates are 0.3% or, you know, 3% or 2%, whatever they're
Yeah.
it's
And I think that there are limits into what we can put in the warrant
Oh, yeah.
for like legally, but we have a lot more latitude in terms of our book and what we can represent. So I think that if we chose to do something to complement what was in the warrant, we would have a little more latitude, just as a food for thought.
Yes, and, you know, I think what we say as a committee has had some response in the past. When we start saying we want to look at, so for example, when we said we want to start looking at tax classification, the Board of Selectmen took that up. So I think they were responding to, I hope they were responding to what our interest was, because we do represent the taxpayers. But as was pointed out to me earlier, it was a shame that there were no persons representing taxpayers that night with the select board meeting, when they talked about it. We had representation from the business community, but none from the taxpayers. So, let's see, you know, we'll have to discuss the process that, if we take it up, as we said we would. before we start doing anything. Okay,
I have one small piece,
yes, Tom?
might be more of a tidbit, but the 0 Ruggle Street property, at least according to Zillow, so it might not be accurate, but it's been on the market for 2,500 days. So it's been for sale for 7 years. And that's an opportunity for a lot of developers and buyers to check it out. And just something to factor in if we're gonna be spending $300,000 to buy the property, there's a reason somebody else hasn't already jumped on it.
Yeah, I mean, if it was developable within a million, it's like 25 acres.
Right, so if we don't do any, if we don't buy it, the land could just sit there forever, and we still get open space out of it.
Who's our open space liaison?
I'm conservation, I can talk to
You're
them.
conservation.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I think she said conservation would control most of it.
Yeah, but I don't think if it's open, we could just like build trails through it or anything.
Children.
No, see, you wouldn't be allowed to use it for trail additions. and
No,
the
no.
water tower access and stuff.
But nobody's
like
bought
that.
it yet, so I was like, ah.
So at the meeting of 10:03, I am going to contact Hank and ask him to come to that meeting. Not to vote again,
Yeah.
but to accept his award from us. You know, we talked about doing it possibly at the town meeting, but I think I'd rather just, yeah, we do.
All the accolades.
Because we're starting at night. We don't,
Yeah, that's right.
now there's 20-something things, so
Yeah, we're gonna be, it's
it
gonna
could
be
be a
a
lot.
It's either, yeah, be prepared for, you know, either staying late or coming back the next night. All right, so, can I have a motion? Anything else before we move on?
Are we up against Monday Night Football? Holy cow.
Sorry,
Kickoff was 40 minutes ago, so. yeah.
DVR.
DVR. Zafford, anything?
No,
Okay, motion to adjourn, please.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second.
don't you want to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
Oh.
Oh,
They haven't been
I
written.
was
Or
trying to
second.
avoid it. I was trying to avoid it.
Or
We
subject.
might want to write them first. We don't have any to approve right
Yeah, if you look at the,
Walter went to
agenda,
Vermont.
Walter went to Vermont. If you look at the agenda, it says, if available. And
Turns out they are.
we thought we'd give them a break.
I just thought it'd be a good ploy with the town manager here to make a plea for the admin. If we get everything done, you know. Oh.
All right, any discussion on the motion to adjourn? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote. Zaffer, you can start. We'll go backwards.
Siddiqui, yes.
Dolan, yes.
McMahon, yes?
Leslie, yes.
Moretti, yes.
Shafford, yes?
Bradley, yes.
We are adjourned. See you the 29th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zaffer.
We should take this with us, right?
Yes, take your